All right, so are you ready to dive into delegation?
Oh, absolutely. Delegation. It's one of those things that sounds so simple in theory, but can be so tricky to actually master.
No, it's one of those like buzzwords you hear all the time, right?
Yeah.
But like when you actually try to put it into practice, it's like, wait a minute, how do I actually do this effectively?
Exactly. And there are so many different approaches. There are so many like potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to unpack all of that today. We've got some awesome resources.
Yes, we have a ton of resources that you guys sent us. I think we have like a Harvard Business School article.
Yes.
A couple of YouTube videos, some articles from like Forbes and other places.
Yeah, we've got Neha Batra.
Yeah.
We've got Marie Forleo.
Ooh, yeah, Marie Forleo.
Yeah, so we're going to be diving into all of that, and hopefully by the end of this, you will have a much clearer understanding of how to delegate like a pro.
I was so fascinated by one of the stats that we came across. It was in the Harvard Business School article. They were saying that CEOs who delegate well generate 33% higher revenue.
That's huge.
That's not just like a little bit. That's a significant
It's not messing around.
increase. Yeah.
No, it's not. And you know what's interesting about that stat is that it really highlights that delegation isn't just about, like you said, getting stuff off your plate. It's a core leadership skill. It's something that can actually have a major impact on a company's success.
So it's less about being a taskmaster and more about being a leader who empowers their team to do their best work.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you don't have to do everything yourself. Your team has unique skills and insights, and when you delegate effectively, you're actually investing in their development and creating a more engaged and productive work environment.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, delegation sounds great in theory, but like, how does it actually benefit me?
Yeah,
it's about more than just getting stuff off your plate or anything.
Absolutely. Think about your goals. Do you want to free up time for more strategic thinking? Do you want to help your team members develop new skills, maybe get promoted? Avoid burnout.
Yes.
Delegation is the key to all of that.
Yeah, I love how that 8 Steps to Delegate Effectively YouTube video, I think that was the title.
Yes.
They really highlight that delegation can actually lead to a more motivated and loyal team.
That's true. When you delegate effectively, you're showing your team that you trust their abilities. And that creates a much more positive and supportive work environment.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, myself included, we struggle with this fear of delegating the wrong thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what if I give up a task and then it all blows up in my face? What if it's a disaster? How do you know what to delegate?
Well, Neha Batra actually has a really practical framework for this in her article. She talks about making 2 lists. One list is things that only you can do, and the other list is things that are potential candidates for delegation.
Okay, so things that only I can do would be like, let's say, performance reviews for my direct reports.
Yes.
Things that involve confidential information or maybe tasks that require specific permissions that I hold that I can't just easily pass off to someone else.
Exactly. Those are like the non-negotiables, the things that really do fall squarely on your shoulders. But then there's this whole other category of tasks that are looking on your to-do list that actually you can delegate. And this is where it gets tricky because a lot of us fall into this trap of thinking, oh, only I can do this.
Oh, totally.
It's our inner control.
I'm the only one who can do this.
Yes, exactly.
We're meant to do this perfectly.
So often that's not true.
Yeah.
And so we really need to, kind of check ourselves when we have that thought.
Yeah.
So what are some of those sneaky tasks that we might be holding on to that could actually be delegated?
Yeah.
Think about things like action items that come out of meetings.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you initially volunteer for them, could someone else on the team handle that?
Oh, for sure.
What about requests for feedback? Instead of always feeling like you have to be the one to give feedback, maybe you could connect that person with someone else on your team who could offer valuable insights.
Oh, that's such a great point, because sometimes I think people will specifically request me for feedback, and I'm like, oh, I have to do it.
Yeah.
But you're saying, no, you can maybe connect them with someone else who
Redirect.
might be a better fit.
Yeah, redirect.
Exactly. And, even things like announcements. We often get stuck in this routine of being the ones who always have to share news or updates, but maybe someone else could take the lead on that.
For sure, for sure. Now, Batra also talks about this least effort, most impact ranking table.
Yes, yeah.
Like a way to kind of prioritize your delegation to-do list.
It's been a game changer for me, honestly. So you literally plot each task on this table based on how much effort it would take for someone else to do it and how much impact it would have. And the tasks that land in that sweet spot of high impact, low effort,
Okay.
those are your prime candidates for delegation. It's like finding those hidden gems on your to-do list that pack a punch without requiring a ton of heavy lifting.
Exactly.
So I think we've covered kind of the why and the what of delegation, but now let's dive into the how.
Yes.
What are the actual steps?
The nitty-gritty.
Yeah, the nitty-gritty of how to delegate effectively without things blowing up in our faces.
Well, the 8 Steps to Delegate Effectively video outlines a really helpful process.
Right.
But it's not like a rigid checklist.
Right.
You have to adapt your approach based on the task, the person you're delegating to, the context, all of that.
So it's more like a framework or a set of guidelines. So step 1 is setting clear goals, but it's not just about telling someone what to do, right? There's more to it than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I actually made this mistake early on in my career where I delegated a research project to a team member. But I didn't really explain why it was important or how it connected to our larger goals. And, they did a decent job, but I could tell they weren't really invested in the project. It felt like just another task to check off their list.
It wasn't exciting for them, right?
Exactly. And later on, I realized that I had failed to really connect the dots for them. If I had explained the why behind the research, how it fit into the bigger picture.
They would have felt more ownership over it.
Exactly. They would have been more engaged, more motivated.
Yeah.
So setting clear goals means not only defining what success looks like,
Okay.
but also explaining why it matters. You need to connect it to the team's goals, to the company's mission, to something that really inspires them.
So setting clear goals is about painting that big picture, showing them how their piece fits into the larger puzzle.
Yes.
And that ties in perfectly with step 2 from the video, which is all about providing context.
It does. You need to go beyond just telling someone what to do. Explain why this task exists. How does it fit into the team's workflow? How does it contribute to the overall objectives? The more context you provide, the better equipped they'll be to make decisions, handle challenges, and really feel that sense of ownership over the task.
So it's about giving them the why behind the what.
Exactly.
So they don't feel like they're just blindly following orders. They understand the purpose and the impact of their work.
Yes, you're empowering them to think critically and contribute their best ideas.
Okay, so we've got setting clear goals, providing context. What's next on the delegation checklist?
Step 3 is all about providing the necessary resources and authority.
Ooh, okay.
You can't just throw someone into the deep end and expect them to swim without giving them the tools they need to succeed.
I've definitely been guilty of that in the past, like handing off a task and expecting someone to just figure it out on their own without giving them the proper guidance or resources or support. It's like sending them on a mission without a map.
Exactly. You need to make sure they have access to the information, the systems, the decision-making power they need to actually complete the task effectively. And this is a really important point that I love from the Harvard Business School article. Don't be afraid to delegate authority.
Wait, hold on. Delegating authority. So we're talking about more than just delegating tasks. We're talking about delegating the power to actually make decisions and take ownership.
Precisely. This is where true empowerment comes in. Instead of micromanaging every detail, give your team the freedom to make decisions within a defined scope. Obviously, you want to set clear boundaries and expectations, but allowing them to own their work fosters that sense of responsibility and accountability.
So it's about finding that balance between giving them the guidance they need, but also giving them the freedom to actually make those decisions and take ownership.
And that brings us to another really crucial step where a lot of managers, I think, stumble. Follow-up and support.
Oh, yeah.
This is such a delicate dance between checking in to see how things are going and falling into the trap of micromanaging.
I am the queen of micromanaging. It is so hard for me to
it's a struggle.
let go.
It is. It's a struggle for a lot of us. So do you have any tips for kind of finding that sweet spot between being supportive and letting go?
Yeah. How do you do that?
Well, remember that delegation is about trusting your team. Regular check-ins are important to monitor progress, to offer guidance, to address any roadblocks. But resist that urge to constantly look over their shoulder or dictate every step of the process. You've got to give them the space to learn, to problem solve, to grow.
So I shouldn't be like breathing down their neck.
No, you don't want to be breathing down their neck. You want to be more like a coach on the sidelines.
Okay.
Cheering them on and offering guidance when needed, but not trying to play the game for them.
Got it.
And that leads us to another really important step: feedback and praise. Any thoughts on how to give effective feedback when it comes to delegated tasks?
I think it's all about being specific. So instead of just saying, good job or this needs work, pinpoint exactly what they did well,
Yes.
what could be improved, and how they can apply those learnings to future tasks.
You nailed it. Specific, actionable feedback is key. And don't underestimate the power of praise. When someone does a great job, acknowledge it.
Yes.
Celebrate those wins, no matter how small they seem. But again, be specific with your praise.
Yeah, I think it's about striking that balance between constructive criticism and positive reinforcement, highlighting areas for improvement, but also recognizing their efforts and achievements.
Yes, exactly.
So feedback and praise, they go hand in hand.
They do. They're both essential for growth and development.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Delegation is a multifaceted skill,
It is.
but with the right approach, it sounds like it can be a real game changer.
It absolutely can. It's a journey. It's not a destination.
But let's be honest, for those of us who are like wired to be control freaks, letting go can feel terrifying. What advice do you have for those of us who really struggle with surrendering control?
I hear you. I've been there myself. It's natural to feel apprehensive, especially if you're used to doing everything yourself. But I want to reassure you, you can do this.
Okay.
Even the most hardcore control freaks can learn to delegate effectively.
Okay.
It's about taking small steps and building confidence over time.
So baby steps are key.
Baby steps are key. Marie Forleo actually has some great advice for this in her video. She suggests starting with easier tasks, things that don't require your unique expertise, maybe some admin work or customer service inquiries.
So dip your toes in the pool before you
Yes.
like cannonball in.
Exactly. And then as you build trust and confidence in your team's abilities, you can gradually increase the complexity of the tasks that you delegate.
Okay, I like that. So start small, build confidence, and gradually increase that level of autonomy.
Exactly. And Marie also emphasizes that mistakes are part of the process. So don't freak out if things don't go perfectly the first time. It's about learning, adjusting, and getting better over time.
So embrace the feedback, learn from those mistakes, and keep iterating.
Exactly. Delegation's all about growth, both for you and your team.
And don't forget that stat from the Harvard Business School article, CEOs who delegate well, 33% higher revenue. That's a pretty compelling reason to give it a try, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable at first.
It is. And if you think about the bigger picture, it's about creating this culture of trust and empowerment and growth within your team. And when people feel valued and trusted, they're going to be more likely to go above and beyond, to be more innovative, to contribute their best work. And that benefits everyone.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of really practical tips for delegation.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's also like a mindset shift involved. How do we, as leaders, how do we overcome that inner resistance to letting go? Like,
Right.
what if we're just hardwired to be control freaks?
I think it starts with recognizing that perfection is not the goal.
Oh, okay.
Delegation is about progress. It's about empowering your team to learn and grow, even if that means a few bumps along the way.
Yeah.
And remember, you're still in control.
Yeah.
You're the one setting the goals.
Right.
You're the one providing context and offering support.
It's like that saying, done is better than perfect.
Right.
Because sometimes we get so caught up in trying to do everything ourselves perfectly
Yes.
that we end up delaying projects or preventing other people from being able to contribute their talents.
Totally.
Delegation is about finding that balance between excellence and efficiency.
You hit the nail on the head. And as you delegate more and see your team succeed, that inner resistance is going to start to fade away.
Okay.
You're going to realize that letting go can actually be incredibly liberating both for you and your team.
Okay, that's encouraging. So we've talked a lot about delegating tasks, but what about delegating authority? How can we, as leaders, empower our teams to make more decisions on their own? What does that even look like in practice?
That's such a great question. And it's a key part of shifting from what we often call a command and control leadership style to something that's more collaborative and empowering. Think of it like this. Instead of being the only one behind the wheel, you're giving your team members the keys to the car and letting them drive.
Oh, I like that analogy. So instead of being the sole driver, we're becoming more like driving instructors,
Exactly.
guiding and supporting our team members as they take the wheel.
I love it.
But where do we even begin?
Well, I think it starts with giving your team more autonomy over smaller decisions and projects.
Okay.
As they prove themselves capable and responsible, you can gradually increase their level of responsibility. It's all about building trust. Just like building a muscle, it gets stronger over time.
So start small, build confidence, and gradually increase the level of autonomy. Makes sense.
Exactly. And communication is absolutely key throughout this process. Make sure your team members understand the boundaries of their decision-making authority, the resources that are available to them, and your expectations for communication and reporting. Be clear about what decisions they can make independently and when they need to consult with you.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between giving them the freedom to make decisions, but also providing the support they need to actually make those decisions well.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance. But when you get it right, the results can be incredible. As your team members become more comfortable making decisions, they're going to become more confident, more engaged, and more invested in the team's success. And that is a win for everyone involved.
That's a win for everyone. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of delegating authority, setting those clear boundaries, providing that support, and then gradually increasing that autonomy. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that letting go, that can be really scary for some of us, especially those of us who are just naturally inclined to be control freaks.
Yes, and it's okay to feel that way. It's perfectly normal to feel a little apprehensive, especially when you're first starting to delegate more authority. But I want to tell you, the rewards far outweigh the risks.
Okay, so how do we overcome that fear then?
It's all about building trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your team, and trust in the process. Remember, you hired these people for a reason. They have skills and talents and perspectives that you might not have. Give them the opportunity to shine.
I like that. Give them the opportunity to shine. It's a leap of faith, but it's a leap worth taking.
Absolutely. And remember, you're not alone in this. Every leader faces this challenge at some point. The key is to be aware of your own tendencies, actively work on building that trust, and celebrate those wins along the way.
So don't be afraid to ask for help, seek guidance from mentors or colleagues, and acknowledge your own growth as a leader as you're going through this process.
Exactly. And remember, delegation is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
There will be bumps in the road, but the rewards are well worth the effort.
So what's the big takeaway here for our listeners when it comes to delegating authority?
Empower your team, foster that culture of trust and collaboration, and ultimately, you're creating a more engaged, innovative, and successful organization.
I love that. It's not just about getting work done. It's about unlocking the potential of your team and creating a more fulfilling and rewarding work experience for everyone.
You got it. And it all starts with taking that first step.
Okay.
Trusting your team and being willing to let go of the reins a little bit. You might be surprised by what they can accomplish when you give them that opportunity.
Okay, that's really great advice. So we've talked a lot about the how of delegation, but I'm curious to kind of explore the when. Are there certain situations where delegation is particularly crucial or beneficial? Or conversely, are there times when it might not be the best approach?
It's not always a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
So when it comes to the when, think about those moments when you feel overwhelmed, like you're drowning in tasks and you can't possibly get everything done. That's a prime opportunity to step back and see what you can delegate.
So delegate before you reach that breaking point.
Exactly. Delegation can be a lifesaver when you're feeling stressed and overloaded. It allows you to really focus on those top priorities.
Okay.
And hand off the rest to your team members. And here's another situation where delegation is particularly valuable when you want to develop your team's skills and expertise.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a way to actually help them grow professionally.
Exactly. If you see someone who is eager to learn, who's ready to take on more responsibility, delegating a challenging task can be a fantastic way to support their development.
It's like giving them that opportunity to stretch their wings and fly a little bit.
Exactly. And here's another scenario. When you need to make a quick decision or take action in a time-sensitive situation,
Okay.
if you have a team member who you trust, who has the knowledge and expertise to handle it, delegating can allow you to respond much more quickly and effectively.
So it increases agility
Right.
within a team or an organization.
Exactly. You're leveraging the collective intelligence and capabilities of your team.
Okay. So delegation can be a strategic advantage.
Absolutely.
In so many different situations. But now let's flip the script. Are there times when delegation might not be the best approach?
There are definitely situations where delegation might not be the most appropriate or effective course of action. For example, if you're dealing with highly sensitive or confidential information,
Oh.
it's probably best to handle that yourself just to ensure discretion and maintain that control over the situation.
So discretion and confidentiality, that's a key thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely, you need to use your judgment
Yeah.
and carefully assess the risks and benefits of delegation. And here's another one. If the task requires very specific expertise or knowledge that only you possess.
Okay, so if it's something that really falls within your unique skill set,
Yes.
or requires a level of experience that your team might not have yet, then it's better to maybe hold on to that one for now.
Exactly. Delegation should never be about just dumping tasks on others because you don't want to do them yourself. It's about making those strategic decisions that empower your team
Right.
and benefit the organization.
So finding that balance.
Yes.
Okay, so we've explored the when it's crucial, when it's beneficial, when it might not be the best approach. But now let's dive into the who.
Okay.
How do we choose the right person to delegate to? Because it's not just about randomly assigning tasks, right?
Absolutely not. Choosing the right person is just as important as choosing the right task.
So what factors should we consider when we're making that decision?
Well, first and foremost, you need to assess their skills, experience, and interests.
Okay.
Do they have the expertise to handle this task? Are they interested in learning new skills or taking on more responsibility? You want to set them up for success, not failure.
It's about finding the right fit between their skill set and the demands of the task.
Exactly. And it's also important to consider their workload. Are they already swamped with other projects? Do they have the bandwidth to take on something new?
Yeah, you don't want to burn them out
Exactly.
by giving them too much.
And here's another important factor: learning style and communication preferences. Some people thrive on detailed instructions. Others want more autonomy and independence. Some prefer face-to-face communication.
Yeah.
Others prefer email or instant messaging.
So tailor your approach to each individual.
Exactly. The more you understand how your team members work best,
Okay.
the more effectively you can delegate to them.
Now, what about those situations where maybe nobody on your team seems like the perfect fit?
Yes.
What if they don't have the necessary skills or experience?
Well, it's important to remember that delegation isn't just about assigning tasks. It's about providing opportunities for growth and development.
Okay.
So if nobody on your team currently has the skills or experience needed, consider it an opportunity to invest in their training.
Oh, interesting. So delegation can actually be a catalyst for professional development.
Absolutely.
Within a team.
It's a chance to help your team members expand their skill sets, gain new experience, and advance their careers. And it benefits the organization as a whole.
It's a win-win.
It is. It's a win-win.
Now, what if you're in a situation where you absolutely need to delegate something, but nobody has the time or the capacity to take it on?
That's a tough one. But in those situations, it's important to be transparent with your team and explain the situation. Yeah. You might need to prioritize tasks, reassign responsibilities, maybe even consider bringing in temporary help or outsourcing certain tasks just to free up that bandwidth.
So be creative, be upfront with your team, and find a solution that works for everyone.
Exactly. Communication is key.
Okay, so we've covered the why, the what, the how, the when, and the who of delegation.
We have.
Is there anything else we need to consider before we move on?
I think it's important to remember that delegation is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event. It requires that continuous communication, feedback, and adjustment. It's about building trust, empowering your team, and creating that culture of shared responsibility and growth.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become. And your team will thrive under your leadership.
Okay, that's encouraging. But let's be real. There are going to be times when things don't go as planned. What advice do you have for handling those situations? What if I delegate something and it just totally blows up in my face?
Well, first of all, don't panic.
Okay.
Mistakes are going to happen.
Okay.
They're part of the learning process, both for you and your team. The key is to view them as opportunities for growth. Don't be afraid to acknowledge the mistake, analyze what went wrong, and adjust your approach accordingly.
So embrace those oops moments.
Yes, exactly. And feedback is essential. So if a delegated task didn't go as planned, take the time to provide constructive feedback. Focus on specific behaviors, offer suggestions for improvement, but also acknowledge their efforts and what they learned from the experience.
So turn those setbacks into opportunities for learning and growth.
Absolutely. Remember, delegation is not about perfection. It's about progress.
Okay, that's reassuring. So before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the common pitfalls or mistakes that people make when they're delegating. What are some of the things that we should be aware of and try to avoid?
Yeah, so one of the biggest mistakes is failing to delegate at all. A lot of leaders fall into this trap of thinking it's just faster and easier if I do it myself.
Oh, yeah, I'm so guilty of that.
But in the long run, that approach is not sustainable. It leads to burnout, it leads to missed opportunities for your team,
Yeah.
and ultimately, it creates a bottleneck.
It's not scalable. Right.
It's not scalable, exactly. Another common mistake is delegating without providing clear instructions or context. If you don't clearly communicate what needs to be done, why it's important, what success looks like, you're setting your team up for confusion and frustration.
Right. It's like, go on this journey, but I'm not going to tell you where you're going.
Yes.
Or what you're looking for.
Exactly. And another one is failing to provide the necessary resources or support. You can't just throw a task at someone and expect them to figure it out on their own. Make sure they have the information, the tools, the training they need.
So you're setting them up for success. You're giving them the tools to be successful.
Yes, and another mistake is micromanaging. Once you've delegated a task, you've got to resist that urge to hover or dictate every single step.
Oh, it's so hard.
I know it's hard. Trust your team to do the job well.
Yeah.
Give them the space.
Okay.
And finally, I think it's important to avoid delegating tasks that are either too easy or too difficult.
Okay.
If a task is too easy, it's not going to challenge your team. There's no growth there. And if it's too difficult, it's going to lead to overwhelm, frustration, maybe even resentment. So find that sweet spot. Find those tasks that are challenging but achievable.
Yeah, find that Goldilocks task. Not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
Just right.
Exactly. And remember, every team member is different. So what's challenging for one person might be a breeze for another. Take the time to really understand their strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits of delegation, the steps involved, the importance of choosing the right person, and now even some common pitfalls to avoid. But now I want to kind of shift gears and talk about the more emotional side of delegation. It's not just about logistics and processes, right? There's a human element involved.
Absolutely. Delegation is about people, and people have emotions, anxieties, and insecurities. So it's important to be mindful of that and approach delegation with empathy and understanding.
Okay, so how do we, as leaders, how do we create a more supportive and psychologically safe environment for delegation? How do we make sure that people don't feel like scared to take on these tasks or overwhelmed by the responsibility?
Well, one of the most important things is to create that culture of open communication. Encourage your team to ask questions, to voice their concerns, to seek clarification when needed. Make it clear that it's okay to not know everything, and that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength.
So create that safe space where they feel comfortable coming to you.
Exactly. And another important aspect is providing regular feedback and recognition. When someone successfully completes a task, acknowledge their efforts, celebrate those accomplishments, and again, provide specific feedback on what they did well. Positive reinforcement goes a long way.
So we're acknowledging their contributions and then reinforcing those positive behaviors.
Exactly. And remember, feedback isn't just about praise, it's also about providing constructive criticism when needed.
Right.
And if a delegated task didn't go as planned, approach that situation with empathy and understanding. Focus on those specific behaviors and outcomes and offer suggestions for improvement.
So we're taking those mistakes and we're turning them into opportunities for learning and growth.
Exactly. And remember, feedback should always be delivered with respect and kindness.
Okay, so we're creating a safe space, open communication, regular feedback. We're recognizing people's contributions, and then we're approaching mistakes with empathy and understanding.
Yes.
Okay, so those are all key things to keep in mind as we're creating that psychologically safe environment for delegation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Remember, delegation is not just about assigning tasks. It's about building relationships, fostering trust, and really empowering your team to reach their full potential.
That's a really good point. So as we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into delegation, what's one final piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think the most important thing is to remember that delegation is a journey, not a destination. It's a skill that takes practice, patience, and a willingness to learn and adapt.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way.
Yeah.
Seek feedback. Adjust your approach.
So embrace the process, the ups and downs, the constant learning that comes with it.
Exactly. And remember, delegation is an investment. It's an investment in your team, in your own growth as a leader, and in the future of your organization.
That's such an interesting question because I haven't really thought about it that way before. How does delegation impact a company's culture as a whole?
It's a ripple effect, really. When leaders delegate well, it creates this cascading impact throughout the entire organization.
Okay. Unpack that for me. What does that look like in practice?
So when people are given that opportunity to take on more responsibility, to make decisions, to contribute their ideas, they feel more valued, more engaged, and more invested in the company's success. They're not just cogs in a machine, they're active participants in shaping the future of the organization.
So delegation can actually be a really powerful driver of engagement and motivation.
Absolutely. And when you have a workforce that's motivated and engaged, they're more likely to go above and beyond, to be creative, to come up with those innovative solutions to problems.
And that can then lead to a more successful and competitive company overall.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle. Delegation empowers individuals, it strengthens teams, and ultimately it transforms the entire organization.
Yeah, I love that. It's not just about getting tasks off your plate. It's about creating this ripple effect of positive change throughout the whole company.
Exactly. Remember that stat from Harvard Business School? CEOs who delegate will generate 33% higher revenue.
Yeah.
That, I think, speaks volumes about the impact delegation can have on a company's bottom line.
So it's not just some soft skill. It's actually a really valuable business skill.
It's a strategic tool. It can be used to achieve a wide range of goals, from individual development to organizational transformation.
So it's not just about doing more. It's about doing things better.
Exactly.
And creating a more engaged, innovative, and successful organization.
You're about working smarter, not harder.
All right, before we move on, I want to circle back to a point that we touched on earlier, which is delegating authority.
Yes.
Because I think this is something a lot of leaders struggle with, especially those of us who are very used to being in control. So can you give us some more practical tips on how to actually do that effectively without feeling like we're completely losing control of this situation?
Of course, remember that car analogy that we talked about before. You're the driving instructor. Your team members are the learners.
Yeah.
You're still in the car, but you're giving them a chance to practice those driving skills.
I like that.
In a safe environment.
So what are some practical steps that we as driving instructors can take to kind of empower our teams to take the wheel?
Well, first and foremost, communication is key.
Yeah.
You need to clearly define that scope of their decision-making authority. What decisions can they make independently? What decisions require your input or approval?
Okay, so setting those clear boundaries and expectations.
Yes, you don't want to create any confusion. And remember, delegation is a process. It's not a one-time event. So start small.
Okay.
Give your team members more autonomy over smaller decisions and projects. And as they demonstrate their competence, you can gradually increase that level of authority.
So just like giving them more challenging driving routes as they become more skilled behind the wheel.
Exactly. And don't forget to provide those necessary resources and support along the way. Make sure they have the information, the tools, the training they need to make those informed decisions.
So it's about giving them that freedom to make those decisions, but also the support to make them well.
You got it. And delegating authority isn't about abdicating your own responsibility.
Yeah.
You're still accountable for the outcomes, but you're empowering your team to be more active participants in achieving those outcomes.
It's a shift in mindset from, I have to do it all myself, to let's do this together.
Exactly, and that can have a profound impact on your team's morale and motivation and performance.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of delegating authority, setting those boundaries, providing that support, and then increasing autonomy over time. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that for a lot of us, especially those of us who are naturally inclined to be control freaks, letting go can be really scary.
Absolutely. And you know, it's okay to feel that way. It's perfectly normal to feel a little apprehensive when you're first starting to delegate more authority. But I promise you, the rewards far outweigh the risks.
So what's the key to kind of overcoming that fear of letting go?
Building trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your team, trust in the process. Remember, You hire these people for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They have skills and talents and perspectives that you might not have.
Right.
Give them a chance to shine.
It's about taking that leap of faith and trusting that they can do it.
Absolutely. And you know you're not alone in this. Every leader faces this challenge. The key is to be aware of your own tendencies, actively work on building that trust, and celebrate the wins.
So be self-aware, actively work on building trust, and then don't forget to celebrate those wins along the way.
Exactly. And again, delegation is a journey,
Okay.
not a destination. There can be bumps along the way, but it's so worth it.
So what's the big takeaway for our listeners when it comes to delegating authority?
It's about empowering your team, fostering that culture of trust and collaboration, and ultimately creating a more engaged, innovative, and successful organization.
I love that. It's not just about getting the work done, it's about unlocking that potential in your team and creating a more fulfilling and rewarding experience for everyone involved.
You nailed it. And remember, it all starts with taking that first step. Trust your team and be willing to let go of the reins a little bit. You might be surprised by what they can accomplish when you give them the opportunity.
Okay, that's great advice. So we've talked a lot about the how of delegation, but I'm curious, what about the when?
Okay.
Are there certain situations where delegation is particularly crucial or beneficial? Or conversely, are there times when it might not be the best approach?
Yeah, it's not always the right solution.
Right.
So when it comes to the when, think about those times when you feel completely overwhelmed, like you're drowning in tasks.
Yes.
You cannot possibly get it all done. That's a prime opportunity to step back and see what you can delegate.
Delegate before you reach that breaking point.
Exactly. Delegation can be a lifesaver when you're feeling stressed and overloaded. It allows you to focus on your most important priorities and delegate the rest. And here's another situation where delegation can be super valuable when you want to develop your team's skills and expertise.
Yeah, give them opportunities to grow and learn new things.
Exactly. So if you see someone on your team who's eager to learn, who's ready for more responsibility, delegating a challenging task is a fantastic way to support their development.
It's almost like you're giving them a chance to stretch their wings and fly a little bit.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And, here's another scenario where delegation can be a game changer. When you need to make a quick decision or take action, something time sensitive, if you have a team member that you trust that has the knowledge, delegating that responsibility allows you to respond so much faster and more efficiently.
So it actually increases your team's agility.
Exactly.
Responsiveness.
Exactly. You're leveraging that collective intelligence and those capabilities.
So it can be a strategic advantage in a lot of different situations. But now let's kind of flip the script. Are there times when delegation might not be the best approach?
There are definitely situations where it might not be the most appropriate or effective.
Okay.
For example, if you're dealing with confidential information,
Right.
highly sensitive information, it's probably best that you handle that yourself, just to ensure discretion and maintain that control over the situation.
So discretion, confidentiality, that's a key factor to consider.
Absolutely. You've got to use your judgment. Carefully assess those risks and benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another one. If the task requires specific expertise
Okay.
or knowledge that only you possess.
Right. So if it's something very niche or very specific to your skill set, then maybe you should hold on to that one for now.
Exactly. Delegation should never be about dumping tasks on others because you don't want to do them. It's about making strategic decisions that empower your team and benefit everyone.
So it's about being strategic, not just lazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've explored the when it's crucial, when it's beneficial, when it might not be the best approach. But now let's dive into the who. Yeah. How do we choose the right person to delegate to? Because it's not just about randomly assigning tasks, right?
Oh, absolutely not. Choosing the right person is just as important as choosing the right task.
So what are some factors that we should consider when we're trying to decide who to give a particular task to?
Skills, experience, interests. Do they have the expertise to handle this effectively?
Mm-hmm.
Are they interested in this? Are they looking to learn new skills?
So it's about finding that good match between their capabilities and the task at hand.
Exactly. You want to set them up for success. And it's also important to think about their workload. Are they already swamped with other projects? Do they have the bandwidth to take on something new?
Yeah, we don't want to burn people out.
No, and another important factor is learning styles and communication preferences.
Okay.
Some people really thrive on detailed instructions.
Yeah.
Others want that autonomy and independence. Some people love face-to-face communication.
Yeah.
Others prefer email or instant messaging.
So tailor your approach.
Exactly. So the more you understand how your team members work best, the more effectively you can delegate to them.
Now, what about those situations where it seems like nobody on your team is a perfect fit? Like, what if they just don't have the skills or the experience?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that delegation isn't just about assigning tasks. It's also about providing those opportunities for growth.
Right.
So if nobody on your team currently has those skills or experience needed, consider it an opportunity to invest in their training.
So use delegation as a catalyst for their professional development?
Absolutely. It's a chance to help them grow their skills, gain experience, and ultimately benefit the organization as a whole.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
You get the task done,
Yep.
and they get to learn and grow. What if you absolutely have to delegate something, but nobody on the team has the time or capacity to take it on?
That's a tough situation.
Yeah.
But I think in those cases, it's really important to be transparent with your team. You might need to prioritize, reassign responsibilities, or even consider bringing in temporary help,
Okay.
or outsourcing some tasks to free up that bandwidth.
So be creative, be upfront, and find a solution that works for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the why, the what, the how, the when, and the who of delegation.
We've covered a lot.
Anything else we need to consider before we wrap things up?
Well, I think it's just important to remember that delegation is an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event. It requires that continuous communication, feedback, and adjustment.
So it's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more comfortable and confident you'll become.
Okay, that's encouraging. But let's be real, there will be times when delegation just doesn't go as planned.
Of course.
What advice do you have for handling those situations?
Well, first of all, don't panic.
Okay.
Mistakes happen.
Okay.
They are part of the process.
Right.
The key is to view those mistakes as opportunities for growth and improvement.
So embrace those oops moments.
Yes, and feedback is crucial. So if a delegated task didn't go as planned, take the time to provide that constructive feedback to the team member. Focus on specific behaviors and outcomes, offer suggestions for improvement, but also acknowledge their effort and what they learned from the experience.
So turn those setbacks into learning experiences.
Exactly. And remember, delegation isn't about perfection. It's about progress.
Okay, that's reassuring. So before we wrap up this section of our deep dive on delegation, I want to talk about common mistakes that people make when they're delegating.
Eric?
What are some of the things that we should try to avoid?
One of the biggest mistakes is failing to delegate at all. A lot of leaders fall into that trap of thinking, it's just easier and faster if I do it myself.
Oh, yeah, I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah, and in the long run, that's not sustainable. It leads to burnout, missed opportunities for development.
Right.
It bottlenecks the entire process.
It's not scalable.
It's not scalable. Another common mistake is delegating without giving clear instructions or context.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't communicate what needs to be done, why it's important, what success looks like,
Yeah.
you're setting your team up for failure.
Right. It's like sending them on a mission without giving them the map or any directions.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is failing to provide the necessary resources or support.
Yeah.
You can't just throw a task at someone and expect them to figure it out on their own, especially if it's something new. Make sure they have the information, the tools, the training.
Set them up for success.
Yes. And then another mistake is micromanaging. Once you've delegated a task, trust your team to do the job well. Give them that space.
Let go.
Let go, exactly. And finally, I think it's important to avoid delegating tasks that are either too easy or too difficult.
Okay.
If a task is too easy, there's no challenge there.
Right.
There's no growth. If it's too difficult, it might lead to overwhelm and frustration. So find that sweet spot. Find that task that's challenging but achievable.
It's like that Goldilocks task, right? Not too hot, not too cold. Just right.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the benefits, the steps involved, the importance of choosing the right person, the common pitfalls to avoid. Now I want to shift gears and talk about the emotional side of delegation.
Okay.
It's not just about logistics and processes, right?
Exactly.
There's a human element involved.
Absolutely. And, delegation is about people. And people have emotions, they have anxieties. So it's so important to be mindful of that human element when you're approaching delegation.
So how do we, as leaders, how do we create a more supportive, a more psychologically safe environment for delegation?
Well, one of the most important things is to create a culture of open communication.
Okay.
Encourage your team members to ask questions, to voice concerns, to seek clarification. Make it very clear that it is okay to not know everything and that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
So create a space where they feel safe to actually come to you and express those thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. And another important piece is providing regular feedback and recognition. When a team member successfully completes a delegated task, acknowledge their efforts, celebrate those accomplishments, and provide specific feedback. Positive reinforcement goes a long way.
So we're acknowledging their contributions and we're reinforcing those positive behaviors.
Yes, exactly. And feedback isn't just about praise, it's about providing constructive criticism when needed.
Right.
And if a delegated task doesn't go as planned, approach that situation with empathy. Focus on the specific behaviors and outcomes and offer suggestions for improvement.
So we're taking those mistakes, those inevitable mistakes, and we're turning them into learning opportunities.
Exactly. And remember that feedback should always be delivered respectfully and with kindness.
So it's about creating that safe space, that open communication, offering that regular feedback, recognizing those contributions, and approaching those mistakes with empathy and understanding.
Yes.
Those are all really crucial elements of creating a psychologically safe environment for delegation.
Absolutely. And delegation isn't just about assigning tasks. It's about building those relationships, fostering trust, and empowering your team to reach their full potential.
That's a powerful reminder. So as we're wrapping up this part of our deep dive into delegation, what's one final piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with today?
I think the most important thing is to just remember that delegation is a journey, not a destination. It takes practice, it takes patience, and a willingness to learn.
So embrace the process, the ups and downs, and the learning that comes along with it.
Exactly. And remember, delegation is an investment. It's an investment in your team, your own growth as a leader, and in the future of your organization.
Sounds like delegation is way more than just a time management tool. It's really a leadership philosophy, a way of empowering your team.
That's a great way to put it. And when you approach delegation with that mindset, it can really transform the way you work and lead.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground today. We've talked about the why, the what, the how, the when, the who, even the emotional side of delegation. But before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to that thought-provoking question that you posed earlier. You asked our listeners to consider the impact of delegation on the organization as a whole. So how does effective delegation contribute to a more agile, a more innovative, and a more successful company culture?
It creates this ripple effect.
Okay.
When leaders at all levels embrace delegation, it sends this really powerful message. We trust you. We value you. We believe in your ability to make a difference.
So it's about fostering that sense of ownership and accountability at every level.
Exactly. When people feel empowered to make decisions, to own their work, to contribute their ideas, that's what creates a culture of innovation. People are more likely to take risks, to experiment, to challenge the status quo when they feel like their voices are heard.
And that creates a more dynamic and competitive organization.
Absolutely. It's about creating an environment where everyone feels like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Okay, so effective delegation can really be a game changer.
It can. It's not just about getting the work done. It's about unleashing the potential of your people and creating a more rewarding work experience.
All right, so let's do a quick recap for our listeners today. We talked about the why of delegation.
Yes.
It's not just about freeing up your time. It's about empowering your team. It's about preventing burnout. We explored the what of delegation using that framework from Neha Batra's article. And remember, avoid that trap of thinking, only I can do this.
Yes, and we talked about the how of delegation, those 8 steps, but remember, you want to adapt your approach based on the context. And for our control freaks out there, remember Marie Forleo's advice. Start small, build that trust gradually, and embrace those mistakes. It's all part of the process.
We talked about the importance of delegating not just tasks, but that authority, empowering your team to make decisions. And then we talked about the when and the who of delegation, emphasizing the importance of choosing the right person for the right task. And finally, we even delved into the emotional side of delegation, talking about the importance of open communication, feedback, and psychological safety.
And how delegation can transform a company's culture.
It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground today. Hopefully our listeners feel a little more equipped to take their delegation skills to the next level.
I hope so too. Remember, it takes practice, it takes patience, but it's such a valuable skill to develop.
So to all our listeners out there, go forth and delegate.
You might be surprised by what you and your team can accomplish.
Awesome. Well, until next time, happy delegating.
Yes, happy delegating, everyone. It really is. It's about creating that more engaged and innovative and ultimately successful organization.
Okay, so effective delegation is a game changer for organizations.
Absolutely. It's not just about getting those tasks done. It's about unleashing that potential of your people, creating a more fulfilling work experience for everyone.
I love that. It's about so much more than just checking things off a to-do list.
Exactly.
So it sounds like effective delegation can really transform a company's culture, creates that more agile, innovative, successful organization.
Precisely. And remember, it all starts with you, the leader.
Okay.
By embracing delegation as a core leadership competency, you can create that ripple effect of positive change.
All right, so before we wrap up today's deep dive into delegation, let's recap some of the key takeaways.
Okay.
We talked about the why of delegation. It's not just about saving time. It's about empowering your team. It's about preventing burnout. It's about achieving more as a collective.
Yes, and we explored the what to delegate.
Yeah.
Using that framework from Neha Batra's article, making those two lists.
Yeah.
And remember, avoid that trap of thinking, only I can do this.
And then we dove into the how of delegation, using those 8 steps from the YouTube video as a guide. But remember to always adapt your approach based on the context.
Exactly.
And for those control freaks out there, we talked about Marie Forleo's advice, starting small, building that trust gradually, embracing those mistakes. It's a journey.
It is.
We talked about the importance of delegating not just tasks, but authority, empowering our teams to make more decisions. We talked about the when and the who of delegation, choosing the right person for the task, giving them those clear instructions, and then recognizing their efforts. And we even talked about the emotional side of delegation, that psychological safety.
We did.
Wow, it sounds like we covered a lot of ground today.
We did.
Hopefully our listeners feel equipped to take their delegation skills to the next level.
I hope so too. Delegation is a skill that takes practice, patience, and remember, a willingness to learn and adapt.
So, to all our listeners out there, go forth and delegate.
Yes.
You might be surprised by what you and your team can accomplish.
Absolutely. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.